Aftermath. There's a very strong probability that you will most likely incur a couple things in your life that all you can really do afterwards is equate it to the aftermath. The one of the worst things is when it's a bomb, when it's unexpected, and whatever circumstance goes off in your life, those notable times in your life where you're left picking up the pieces, so to speak. You're left with your heart in fragments. You're left with trying to figure it out, what comes next. Oftentimes we start to have our life defined, both in identity and mission and purpose, and maybe just the overall culture of our life after these distinguishing times. Very often we have dreams and aspirations and sometimes innocent thoughts and hopes about our future, and then things occur and you enter into the period of the aftermath. And it's what happens in that aftermath that begins to slowly form like clay the next season or possibly destiny of one's life. Myself, I was probably at the climax of my first career stint, young, maybe mid to upper 20s, and from the outside looking in, kind of running at all cylinders, progressing in my career path at the time, young family, young father, and I remember I felt to have like a dedicated time where I could just really mature spiritually. And I remember I set aside a 40-day consecration of just committed time of fasting. And it was a monumental experience, very intimate and personal experience that I think I was able to do a lot of evaluation internally. And sometimes I think when we go through these seasons, maybe it's college, maybe it's this personal journey of this period of time, maybe it's whatever you could possibly think of that's a momentous occasion or season for you. Maybe it's a moment, maybe it's a season that quantifies as a moment at large, but it's maybe in our human nature to think, well, we will be on the top of the mountain after that, and we will reach a new pinnacle after that, maybe in your relationships, your career, your athletic progression, maybe your academic progression, maybe your spiritual state or being, maybe in your leadership life. But I know for me, it was something that prepared me for things that I did not know that was coming down the pike. Had a bomb that went off in my life that changed virtually everything that I was centralizing around, my career path, my relationships, and that aftermath lasted for a couple years. It's like, you're sitting down imagine yourself in World War II times, all the pictures, all the images, the movies that have been made, and you're sitting there with your family, and you have your wife, and you have your little kid, and you're just there at your humble little table. I don't know, picture yourself in Germany, picture yourself in Israel, wherever. And it's that image of life is just as good as it can be. It's simple, and it's well nourished, and you're going places, and then before you know it, there's a bomb that goes off 3 blocks away, and you may not be close enough where you experience fatality from it yourself, but the rumblings of it absolutely shake you to the core, and it changes everything around you. I remember my first experience in Manhattan was less than a month after 9/11, and I can remember being young at the time it happened, looking at the images, and you can see the effects. Obviously, it's like Pearl Harbor, everybody knows where you were, or D-Day, whatever. And I can remember looking at the TV, and I can remember looking at images, I'm sure. But weeks later, walking through Manhattan, blocks away from the site, you could put your finger upon the building and put dust upon your finger. You could have, there was a smell in the air, there was a feeling, all the other senses that you couldn't get from NBC or CBS, etc. And you were experiencing those other senses that blocks away from the devastation. The effects were felt. And maybe the building was still there. Maybe it looked on the surface. I remember walking by a building and the surface was there, did not crumble, but it was dusty. And you could look on the inside and it was all broken to pieces. And a very befitting example for aftermath that, things go off, maybe not always in our life, but those around us. And somehow, some way it does affect us. And we're left sometimes with shattered dreams and broken thoughts and direction. And then, oftentimes if we don't handle that aftermath effectively, it's like a seed that grows. It's like a mess that leads into a more mess, and a snowball that just keeps getting bigger. And if you don't check the structure of the building and clean it down and reorganize it, some of the destruction internally can, give way to a beam loosening up over time, and then give way to a framework loosening up over time. And before you know it, you have a more personalized problem, and you have another bomb that goes off. And that's what happened, certainly in my life. And you think about these times in your life, whatever it could be for you, maybe, I don't know, whatever it is. Maybe it's a job being lost, which I've had that. Maybe it's divorce, which I've had that. Maybe it's something that you trusted, like a church breaking apart. I've had that. Maybe it's, a career that you thought you would have, and you're dismantled by injury. Maybe it's health related. Maybe it's injury related, and I've had that. There's all sorts of things, and I don't know what it might be for you. You might be listening to this, and you might be a basketball recruit in California, and something has happened in your sophomore year, and now it's not the career path you had thought, and somehow you have to find a way to make that work into your junior year. Maybe it's a young lady in Georgia who started off working for a company, and essentially moved away from family to build this company and this vision and this dream, and now that situation is bankrupt, and the contacts or references are gone, and you're left figuring it out what to do. And everyone has a situation. And the point of this particular podcast is that there is an aftermath that we experience in life, and probably multiple ones. And I just want to encourage us that, number one, in the aftermath, I'm going to give you 3 things of what to be at least conscious of in the aftermath. Number one is be okay with it. Allow yourself to hurt. Allow yourself to grieve. Allow yourself to be, affected to a degree. You can't hear a bomb, lose your hearing, see a bomb go off, and not pretend not to have nightmares when you can't sleep. I mean, you just got to realize that it's okay to be hurting, and it's okay for you to be experiencing whatever that you might be feeling. Number 2, everyone has an opinion. And at the end of the day, oftentimes, especially if you're in somewhat of a leadership capacity, or you have family members or friends who depend upon you, and you're responsible, at the end of the day, and first and foremost, you've got to look out for the well-being of yourself and those in your immediate family and those in your inner circle. We can't save everyone. We can't do everything for everyone. And we have to make sure that our relationships, and it starts even before that, the health of our minds, our hearts, our spirits, are receiving healing and nurturing and making decisive decisions to promote that. The third thing is, and I'm sure other things could be discussed, but for the purpose of this message, the third thing is, I'm going to use a word called leverage. In ancient times, there was what they would call the work of an apothecary. It's referenced in the Bible. It's basically a pharmacist. And I'm sure, no matter your religious background, we've all heard of the concept of incense or oil, or incense anointing oil, etc. And in the Jewish culture, that was a huge part of indicating divine presence upon a person. And then that concept continued on then into Christian belief systems as time and history went on. But when you really study what made up that, the ingredient section, if you will, they would take all these different herbs from a tree. And, when you look and you analyze those different herbs, you'll find that there's both bitter herbs and sweet. And then if you start to pull out the calculator to the situation and the evaluation of it, there was actually more bitter herbs than sweet. And it's kind of like the old saying, it's not the cards that you've been dealt with, but how you handle them. And so all I can really say is, let's just say it absolutely stinks when what you had envisioned seems like it's absolutely demolished. And this might be the worst thing to hear if you're going through that right now, because I definitely don't want to hear it when I'm down. I'd rather just, hey, I'm down, and I'll come around when I come around. But the reality is when you take all those broken pieces, more broken than blessed, more bitter than sweet. And the whole key is not for those ingredients just to sit there dormant, but at some point you begin to surrender those offer those in the context that I was speaking of, that was an offering up to God, and then God's presence would come and anoint that situation, like the signification of God's presence and blessing upon that situation. And relating that to life, when we offer up all these experiences, that's when a beautiful new vision can occur. And that vision is so powerful and pure and peaceful that it is not something that necessarily, it just comes out of the womb that way. That comes by trial, that comes by error, that comes by something being perfected. It's by patience, it's by tribulation, it's by going through the thick and thin. It's by, in a way, a new birth, laboring and groaning for a new chapter in your life to occur. So, as I kind of try to wrap this up here, I remember I was young, and before I had even did this 40-day fasting period, I remember driving with a man who was older than me. He was an out-of-town visitor, and I was driving him to a restaurant, and he had, when he was younger, did something similar, had a period of time where he just totally separated himself. And he was saying how when he's older now, he's still reaping the benefits of that. And I'm sure I valued that and believed it at the time. But now that I'm years removed from my fast and years removed from the bombs that went off in my life, you start to see that, okay, now I get it. That wasn't just for me to be on the mountaintop and for everything to be together. Like, I'm still cashing in on that bank account. I'm still drawing withdrawals from that deep deposit. And that's why really this podcast in general is called The Secret Place. And as you might know, I'm the founder of March Leadership Services. I'm also a national scout for the collegiate level. And, I deal with all sorts of situations out there. And here's the thing. Our public life, that's one thing, but we all need and crave and desire that place that really no one else can see. That place that's very intimate, very dear, very near. That secret place with God, that secret place within yourself, that place where you quiet down from the loud world and opinions around. And that's really the drawing strength. And so, kind of coming to a climax here, we're going to have aftermaths in our life. Times when we're shaking our heads wondering what just happened here? My life has been redefined. My life is different than I thought it would be. My life is not what I expected it to be. How do I pick up the pieces from this? How do I didn't foresee this happening. This was not part of my 10-year plan. I did not make accommodations for this. And I just want to encourage you that if looked at in a certain angle, that aftermath can become in such a weird way a peaceful pathway into such a powerful existence that pulls things together in ways that's beyond our finite understanding and brings effect and healing and wholeness and capacities that we are not fully capable, I think, of being aware of or cognizant of. So I do want to encourage you that of those items in the period of your aftermath, and that a beautiful day's coming. And God has not buried you, but has planted you. And I hope you have a great Resurrection and Easter weekend. Signing off, Mart's Leadership Services, Ryan Martz.